Hello and welcome to the second in a short series of episodes from the Full Force podcast where we play each FSS figure against each other in a battle to see who is the greatest action figure the club released in the 8 waves of their figure subscription service. We are looking at each wave separately, of course, and having looked at FSS 1.0 on the last show with Big Boa taking the victory, we now move on to FSS 2.0, and due to the awkward numbers that just don't really work in a playoff structure, we will be doing groups of 3 in the first round, and the mystery 13th will go up against the winner at the end. I am Christopher Big Blower McLeod, aka Diagnostic 80, and joining me on this and all the episodes for this particular short series are Full Force regulars Adam Barrel Hole Riches and Justin Iron Bell. Now, before we get stuck into round 1, let's crunch the numbers with Adam Snitches Get Stitches Riches, Madam.
Alright, FSS 2.0 was originally available to order from May 1st, 2013 through May 22nd, 2013. Original retail price was $368.50 shipped, which breaks down to $28.34 per figure, which is, for those keeping score, a $1.32 jump per figure from last round.
Oh, wow. Already. We've gone up already. That's impressive.
You got to pay the cost to be the boss, you know? FSS 2 has a lot of new tooling. And the first shipment of FSS 2 arrived 176 days after FSS 1's last shipment.
Yeesh.
Interesting.
Well, that's quite interesting about the price hike already. We've only had, 2 FSSs, and they've already gone, right, we can get more money out of these douchebags. And they were right. I must admit, actually, FSS 2 is one of those FSSs that it's a real solid run for me. There's a lot of good figures in this lineup. A few little bits and pieces, which obviously we'll get to as we go through it. So let's get stuck into round 1. Fight! Round 1! And first up, we have Tiger Force Airtight, Tiger Force Shipwreck, and Wide Scope. Let's start with Airtight here, guys. Adam, take us through your thoughts on Airtight, and I'll stop saying Airtight.
Well,
it's amazing. Yeah, we know it's a great figure. It's Tiger Force.
Yeah, at the time it came out, for me, because we hadn't had the Tiger Force concept yet, I believe. That was 2015, right?
Correct.
Yeah, yes. So at that time, to be getting this, when we still had so many more glaring omissions in Tiger Force, felt a little bit and also, at the time, because the context is king here, the tooling hadn't been reused all that much just yet. So, and Airtight was a very popular figure that had only been released a couple of years earlier, so it still felt pretty fresh.
They used it twice in this freaking FSS, didn't they?
We're getting there. So yeah, I don't think it's the most striking figure. I don't have quite the Tiger Force affinity that you do.
How dare you?
So Airtight as a figure, great sculpt, good character, but for FSS, right out of the gate, this isn't going to be winning.
What about Justin?
Yeah, I mean, like Adam said, context matters. I really enjoyed the tooling that they used for Airtight. This kind of figure build was really, really great. Kind of very nice sculpting, really great articulation, a really high quality base figure. That being said, I didn't really need a Tiger Force Airtight necessarily, and I kind of preferred the original version that Hasbro got us. So I wasn't really sure what the point of this figure was. Like Adam said, the rest of the Tiger Force hadn't even been made yet. The rest of the domestic release Tiger Force hadn't been made yet, so I wasn't sure why we were getting foreign release Tiger Force repaints. Yeah, and this tooling was still pretty new and interesting back then, but like you guys said, they used it kind of 2.5 times in this FSS. They used it for Airtight, for Dragoon Ski, and then for half a Cesspool. So it certainly got a little bit more mileage out of this figure subscription service. It's still great parts, but yeah, nothing about this figure really knocks my socks off.
I'm going to be the dissenting voice in this particular segment, I think. But only because I think it covers a few bases for me that I just really like about what the FSS can do for the kind of collector community, and that is the international kind of, or the foreign repaints. Obviously this is based on our Puro of the Brazilian side of the G.I. Joe kind of mythos, and I just love the fact that they went there. And like I said, I think it's fine at this stage. Again, taking context, at the time, you are saying, yes, there are a lot of things that haven't been done yet, but it's still fresh in the fact that we're all thinking this is going to be going on for ages. We're thinking at that point, man, we've got like conventions and we've got we've got 15-figure box sets that we fully expected Tiger Force to appear in, and they did. And so I kind of felt like at the time it wasn't a thing of like, oh, why are they doing this now? I kind of feel like they were just in that position, just as we were in mentally, to go, we have got the time to do this, and this is a perfect time to do it, before it gets to the point where we can't. And I know you might also argue the fact that, do we really need these? But I'm of the ilk of, man, I'll take everything that was done back in the day, in like the modern format. And I'm a sucker for repaints. I'm a sucker for Tiger Force. This figure, anyway, is freaking awesome. I don't care what anyone says. There's a reason it's reused a lot. Is because it's a brilliant figure from the base. So I kind of think, seeing that again is cool. Yes, it's yellow again, and it's just tiger stripes on there, and you're probably taking a few, you're probably taking less kind of, paint deco away from it in a sense. But I don't know, I like it, I dig it, I like the homage, and I don't think it's gonna be winning the FSS, this round or this particular episode or even the final, but I do think it's an awesome figure and I do like it. So I'm a bit of a dissenting voice on this particular action figure. What about your thoughts? I imagine they're going to be the same for you guys on Shipwreck.
Yeah, my thoughts on Shipwreck are much the same as Airtight, but I think that he gets the nod just a little bit because at least he got new sleeves, so it did feel like they tried to freshen up the character a little bit. It didn't just feel like a direct reuse in the same way that Airtight did. Yeah,
we got like on a long sleeve action, didn't we, on him? What about you, Justin? Anything to add on Shipwreck?
Yeah, I mean, he actually has a couple more points against him than Airtight did, at least in my mind. I'm not a huge fan of the Shipwreck character to begin with, and the base figure that they did improve it, like Adam said, with the arms, where he's got long sleeves now with some more decent range of motion, but kind of the weird pistol holster and the legs that are with the ankles that aren't really all that well articulated, and the sculpting isn't fantastic. Yeah, he's fine. He's just, and any of the small redeeming qualities I had for Airtight, I don't necessarily have for Shipwreck, so I can appreciate what they did, and it's an okay figure, but it really doesn't do a whole lot for me.
3 stars.
I do think I have to jump in here though to bring up something that's going to be a crucial point moving forward in all of these reviews. This Shipwreck makes introduction of the dreaded first use of shock trooper parts.
Wow.
Look for them in virtually every figure of every FSS to come.
In actual fact, that brings us on to the next figure in this group of of action figures, and that's Wide Scope. So, Adam, you're obviously quite close to this because obviously you did the art for it. The art is obviously you. We've gone through this multiple times in other episodes, so I'm not spoiling your discussion of the story here. But take us through your thoughts on the actual figure.
Yeah, well, I should say here, too, as a preface point, I mean, obviously this isn't an art review and we're talking toys here, but this is the first FSS that I worked on, and I've worked on every one since, and so obviously I have a real bias and familiarity to a lot of these characters, and intimately familiar with some of them, having had to stare at them for 20 hours at a time painting them, so, it gives me very strong formed opinions about the ones I worked on. I can't really help it.
Yeah.
So, and yes, obviously, Wide Scope bears my likeness on the card art. So for that reason, of course, I have a particular bias. But the character, I didn't really, prior to painting it, I didn't really have any particular feelings towards. I mean, I think a lot of people feel like he's just sort of a second-rate Shockwave. But at this time, having not had the extensive reuse of the Shock Trooper parts that we'd later come to have, this figure looked awesome. I mean, at that time, it was a welcome thing to see those parts again because they're awesome. Like, that's why they've been used so many times. And I think that the color palette is very striking. He really sticks out. Like, this was... At this time, you didn't really see a lot of the modern era stuff in that brighter neon color spectrum. A lot of it was they were still going for more of like a grounded in reality basis. This is before we really reached like the 90s homage point.
Yeah.
So this figure definitely sticks out. And I think, I mean, it basically is Shock Trooper, but, the parts work remarkably well together. And the retooled Lamont and the Riot Shield that just so happens to fit on the hook of the vest
is a really nice, isn't it? That is amazing. I love how they've got Lamont in the sniffing position as well. I think that's just so cool. I mean, it's different from, a lot of the animal characters always being kind of like attack mode. But I just love the fact that he's doing that, and it means you can kind of do, your kind of like drug sniffing dog dio scenes and stuff. Justin, what do you think about widescope?
Yeah, I'm finding myself pretty closely aligned with Adam as well. I'm one of those rare collectors that actually has an affinity for the new Sculpt era for 2000 through 2004. That period of time, I loved how they introduced all these new characters, and even if some of the production methodology itself was a little shoddy with a bunch of proportions and whatever, I really liked a lot of the concepts and ideas, and I loved it when they revisited that era in these figures, especially when they did it right and did it well, unlike Barrel Roll in the last FSS. They actually seem to do this one right. I mean, he's not an exact copy of the FSS version, but close enough, and he is mostly just shock trooper parts, but the paint deco is really great. The accessories are high quality. It's this kind of figure that seemed to happen quite often in the early FSSs, where they take a character that people don't especially care about and do some cool things with them to make him a character somebody will care about, rather than in, without getting too editorial, and more modern FSSs where, they take a character nobody really cares about and don't really do much with them to make people care about them. This figure, they did a great job with, with the fantastic card art and no kissing up intended.
Brown nose.
But that art's really fantastic, and I can just picture already them saying, make sure the dog's there, make sure the gun's there, make sure the shield's there, make sure this is, and you managed to balance it all very nicely. I
can imagine them saying loads of stuff. I'm not going to say it on here. Yeah, what I really love about it is obviously the club were like famous almost for this urban rain camo that they kept doing.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, because that wasn't prevalent on the original widescope figure. It was just a white splash over blue kind of pants kind of camo, which was a bit odd.
It's just like semen, kind of.
It does look like someone's just jacked all over his pants.
It's the first thing I think of when I see widescope pants.
Wide jack, I'm going to call it from now on. And yeah, so I love what they did with the camo pattern, and obviously that was something they did on the Steel Brigade. I don't think it's exactly the same, but obviously that kind of scratchy urban rain, I think that's been described as, which I think is brilliant. Yeah, and again, like Lamont is just freaking awesome. I love the fact that he is just slightly different in the animal kind of companion realm in the sniffing position. I just think it's brilliant. Okay, so out of the three, I think I know what's going through, but let's just break this down. Anywho, okay, guys, let's start with your least favorite out of the three. Adam, give me your least favorite out of the three of these in this round, please.
It's a tie between Tiger Force Airtight and Tiger Force Shipwreck.
Spoiler alert. Justin?
I'd say Tiger Force Shipwreck gets a little bit of the edge, is the worst of the three.
Brilliant. And I'm going to go with Tiger Force Shipwreck. So he's out at this stage. Sorry, Tiger Force Shipwreck. That means I would imagine that Widescope sneaks it. But before I ruined all of that, Adam, who's your winner?
Widescope.
Obviously. Justin, who's your winner?
Widescope.
And I'm going Widescope too. I love the Airtight figure. I absolutely adore it. But this Widescope, like Justin mentioned, the perfect update. As Adam mentioned, just a really good use of the parts, even though, and going back into the context element of it, this is before Shock Trooper is used 1 trillion times. So it's cool to see. It's made a relatively not that well-known character very, very cool, I think, as well. Yeah, excellent. So congratulations, Widescope. You move on to the next round. Now, to the other round one. We have Skullbuster, Tollbooth, and Desert Scorpion. Explosions everywhere. Let's start with Justin this time. Thoughts on Skullbuster, please, Justin? Or Skulljuster.
Oh, I see what you did there.
That doesn't make any sense.
I understand kind of what the club was going for. I mean, first of all, Skullbuster once again falls into that new character in the 2000s realm as kind of the Range Viper commander. I really liked the O-ring version of him with that interesting kind of metallic purple uniform and gold trim and off-white stuff. And the club manages to take all the cool things about the color scheme and remove them and make them just kind of like generic flat purple.
Right.
Plus, slap a couple, really, really crazy ankle-length long arms on them. And,
the forearms look so gross, don't they?
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to jump in there. It's weird.
No, it's fine. It does not. It's really bad construction. The paint isn't really great. And considering what I believe it was before this FSS, but somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that both Devil's Due and IDW maybe had addressed the Skullbuster character and done some very cool things with him.
Yes.
Which the club completely ignored, instead, just going with a repurposed Range Viper with worse parts and a worse paint scheme. And I actually really like the 25th anniversary Range Viper, but the club took anything that was interesting about it and made it terrible. So, not my favorite. I
kind of have to agree with a lot of those things there. I think if you sort the lower arms out and you subdue the colour scheme, and which they, like, usually the club will subdue what the original one is like, or they will do it identical if it's already subdued. So I don't understand why they didn't go for that darker purple, because the original Skullbuster's great. I think he looks brilliant. Also, it's funny, isn't it, that the Deke animation had Eevee, the Skullbuster, in purple. And I always thought, when we did the G.I. Joe Berg card art battle, this came up, but we completely forgot about the actual Skullbuster that came out in that kind of, in the era that will not be named. But at the same time, like, I think that version of it is so much better, so much more, like, just better in general. And I think if they'd gone with the darker purple, used the original forearms, because I mean, it's Shadow Tracker, right? So
he's got Shadow Tracker's forearms, and I don't remember.
And his bola weapon.
Yeah.
But
and his
why?
big, huge spear.
And his spear, yeah.
Why use a character whose hand is fixed to fire a bow and arrow? It just doesn't make any sense to me, that one. Especially when the Range Viper doesn't have that weapon. But anyway, that was a bit crazy.
Strange choices, yeah.
Yeah, so I think they just fell a little bit short on this one for me. Yeah, it's a shame, but it could have been, Range Viper, but in purple, just sounds like a no-brainer. It sounds like, let's smash that, do that. He can be the guy that leads the Skullbusters. And then there was the green one as well from, like, I want to say Rise of Cobra. Was it Rise? Yeah, so it
was one of those exclusive kind of mini vehicle sets. It came with a Whirlwind kind of double-barreled chain guns.
And you'd think, like, that would be, cool to have as like the team. You've got 3 different versions. I don't know, some sort of like vehicle driver or heavy weapon kind of Range Viper, and then the leader and the actual regular Range Vipers. It's just like, damn, they've kind of really screwed the pooch here. Anyway, Adam, what are your thoughts?
Well, like you guys said, this is, for where as great as modern era Joes are, they suffer from something that O-ring figures didn't, because they lack uniformity in their construction. So even if you have parts that would look great together in theory, that doesn't always mean they will in execution. So, on the one hand, everybody doesn't want straight up repaints. They want things that feel new and different and mixed and matched, but you try to do that and then you end up with arms that go down to his knees. So, it's, but then the flip side to that is, but we just got this figure the year earlier and now he's 4 times as much money in a different color. So we want to make it different. So, I tend to be forgiving because it is a difficult balance, but at the same time, like, this figure just didn't really work for me on several levels, and the arms are certainly at the top of that list. It's hard to see past them.
Literally, because they're so bloody big. So that's Range Viper. Justin, take us through Tollbooth.
I actually really like Tollbooth. I mean, he's
amazing. Spoiler alert.
He's got a great head sculpt back when Boss Fight was still working on the head sculpts, and they did a really fantastic job with, the slightly askew kind of hard hat look. I love that the figure, I believe at least the neck to ankles is a Rise of Cobra Night Fox, I think is the character's name, which is also repurposed from Dusty and a couple other figures.
Yep.
But it makes the figure overall, a little bit squatter and shorter than some of the others, which I think adds some nice, cool character to him. He's got a cool black kind of military style vest that looks really great. His accessories with the orange cones and the barbed wire and the sledgehammer and all that stuff are all really well done. I never really cared for the original Tollbooth, and they once again took a character that I didn't really have a whole lot of attachment to and made him really, really awesome. So I was extremely impressed. And back in those days, I think the 1985 series of Joes were only missing a couple, and Tollbooth was one of them. And they may have only been missing one. I don't remember exactly. Tollbooth, I remember, just filled a really important role within those early years of modern era updates. So I thought he was great, perfect candidate for an FSS, and they really knocked it out of the park.
I'm going to have to disagree with you on one thing that you mentioned there, and that's but again, it's from a personal point of view, and that's that I actually did like him as a figure from back in the day, but a lot of that has to do with the fact that I never had the bridge layer, because I'm pretty sure it never came out in the UK anyway. So he was one of those characters that just kind of slipped by, but you saw him in in other things. Like there were other ways that you ended up seeing Tollbooth. And I remember seeing the figure for the first time and just thinking, man, it is just packed with character. And even if it's not the most exciting figure, sometimes if they've got the fact that his hard hat was on wonky, and there's the kind of weird waistcoat, open waistcoat over the shirt, and that's open. You've got dog tags. He's also one of those characters that I love it when there are tampos on the arms. Yeah.
He's got that shirt unbuttoned to his belly button.
I know, he is sexing it right.
He's all out there.
He is. He's working in a toll booth all day long. What I would say about the modern version, though, I absolutely adore it. I think it's a brilliant update. Obviously, they went for a different tampo on the arm. It's the engineer's tampo, isn't it? So again, that's really cool. I think that's fits what he's about. The only thing I would say is that even though I do like it when they do the kind of the modern updates, or the Pursuit of Cobra, as we like to call it, the Pursuit of Cobra updates, I would have loved to see that vest, a new kind of, not necessarily one that there's already out there, but one, if they'd have done a new vest for him that just went over that shirt, I think that would have been absolutely superb, because you could use that, even though it's a basic waistcoat, that could be utilised for a lot of different characters down the road. There are a few random ones that have, those kind of almost simple waistcoats. A few of the Dreadnoks, and I think Crystal Ball almost has something like that as well. The original one, I'm probably misremembering, but I would have loved to have seen that. Other than that, though, I think it's a really good, it just works really well, modern update wise. And the head is just absolutely stunning. I think he's bloody brilliant. Yeah, so I'm all for this guy in both original and modern. Adam, what about yourself?
Well, at the time that I got into Joe as a kid, in 89, 90, stuff was already taking sort of a flair for the bombastic. And so when I look back at the first 3 years of Joe, even though there's some iconic characters there, a lot of the designs look very bland to me by comparison, just color wise. Yeah. And for that reason, I never really liked Tollbooth, because by 85 you start to see that transition into the more bright colors, crazy designs, and he felt kind of like a holdover from the older era. He felt very drab compared to everything else in 85. But the highest compliment I can pay this figure is that really when they first started showing the FSS 2 reveals, or when I first started seeing them anyway, this one really instantly stood out to me as whoa, it was such a striking update from the original, and it made such excellent use of parts that were available at the time, the Techno Viper cone coming back, the barbed wire, the pickaxe, the sledgehammer. It was such a great loadout. A lot of times you see figures that come with 20 weapons, and you're like, why do they have all these?
like the Lady J in the Retaliation.
Yeah, exactly.
500 rifles.
She only has 2 hands. Yeah. But this figure, every single piece he comes with, you're like, oh, I could see why you'd have that, or I could use this in a scene. So just everything. I mean, I don't have a bad thing to say about this figure, and like you guys said, the head sculpt is amazing. So it was just all around, this thing is just a perfect storm. Everything about it's great.
It makes me laugh. This figure is basically a literally one-man dio builder, isn't it? Effectively, there's so many things in there that you can utilize. every single choice works, and like, I mean, they maybe could have thrown the wrench in. Did they have the wrench at that point? The cross country one, probably not, right?
No, that came in 13, so it wasn't out yet at this time.
So I think had that been available, that would have been thrown in there as well, because obviously, the more the merrier with those kind of things. And it wouldn't have taken much space up in the plastic, I don't think. But anyway, yeah, brilliant figure.
Also, this has nothing to do with the figure, but shout out to his very strange file name, Chuck X for Nothing Gorin. What is X for Nothing? His parents just gave him the middle initial of X, and it stood for nothing. That always perplexed me.
Yeah, that is weird. So I'm guessing that the brackets for nothing means that X doesn't stand for anything like that. It's just an initial. That's so weird. Well, Chuck X for Nothing, Goran, from Boise, Idaho.
Just call me Adam X for Nothing, Riches.
I like that his secondary military specialty is sapper. I think that's pretty cool, because obviously we've got a sapper in Action Force. But in any case, brilliant figure, absolutely superb. But there is another one in this group that we have to discuss, and that is Desert Scorpion. So, coming back to you, Justin, take us through Desert Scorpion, please.
Yeah, Desert Scorpion's actually one of my kind of unsung heroes of the vintage G.I. Joe line, the 1991 release. I thought he was a really cool figure. And I know at one point he was slated to come out with the Pursuit of Cobra line, I believe, in one of those big mech suits. Yep.
Yeah.
And then that ended up getting canceled. So I think this was the club's idea to make up for that. And, it's an okay figure. I'm not really, it doesn't knock my socks off or anything. It's some of the sculpting looks a little dated when you compare it to some of the more modern, 30th anniversary or Pursuit of Cobra sculpting that we got within the FSSs.
Yeah.
So it's fine. The Crocmaster arms with like the crocodile teeth bite marks taken out of them, are those scorpion stings or something? I mean, I don't know what's up with that. But and the Zartan armor is, it's an okay choice, but the bare midriff painted as yellow cloth or whatever. It's just there's a lot of really weird design elements kind of being worked into a single figure that worked pretty well back in 1991, kind of where everything is sculpted onto the figure and they can really kind of look at how each piece interacts with the other. But when you try to layer all this other stuff on top of this other stuff, it doesn't always mesh the same way. And some deco choices that seemed a little off. Like, I understand why they kind of made his skin a little bit tanner. If he's spending a lot of time out in the desert, or if he's of a different ethnicity, he might have a slightly different skin tone. Not sure why they didn't paint his shin pads brown like the original figure does or anything like that. But I guess all in all, it's an okay figure. It's not fantastic, but it's fine.
I have to agree with most of what you said there, actually. But something that kind of came up when we, again, doing the FSS battle, Desert Scorpion was in there with the card art. Again, stunning card art, brown nose. But what kind of really stood out for me is the fact that, like, the original Desert Scorpion, to me, doesn't look like Snake Eyes. I know, like, you could say, well, he kind of does. He's got the goggles, he's got the vents in his mask. But even the fact that the vents go the different directions, Snake Eyes, does it enough to really take it and make that mask different. And obviously the top part of it's different, and you've got the dusty, like, flowing kind of element to it. So the original one doesn't... I never looked at it and thought Snake Eyes, believe it or not. And then when they use the Snake Eyes head for this version, all I can see is Snake Eyes. I can't unsee it. And when I look at this figure, I just think it's Snake Eyes dressed as a desert... it's just Desert Snake Eyes in the next Pursuit of Cobra range of figures. And again, it's not a bad thing, because that is quite bad. I don't know. I've got that kind of... I don't know, yeah. I think they've, like you said, too many things going on here where they've tried to recreate using all those kind of existing pieces. And it sort of works, but it doesn't work at the same time. There's a conflict going on here that is quite jarring, but at the same time, it holds together. It's almost like it's like some sort of like supernova that's exploding, but then a superhero is like holding it back from blowing up. So it's kind of like in this flux of where it's trying to break apart, but can't. I know that's a really bad description of what I'm trying to say. This thing basically looks like it's exploding and being held together by some sort of other force. But having said all that, I do think it looks bad. I think he looks really cool as a figure, and I love his massive scorpion. What about you, Adam?
I kind of echo what you guys say. I just feel like he's just made up of this combination of disparate parts, and it works and it doesn't. It's this very strange, like, I can't help but look at him and be like, oh yeah, that's Night Creeper's headdress, that's Snake Eye's head, that's Crocmaster's arms, that's Zartan's torso, like, and I mean, yeah, I'm a G.I. Joe geek, and I know all these parts, in that, of course, that's part of why, but, like, I don't know, it just doesn't work. Like, some parts of it do. Like, I think that the lower legs from the Hiss Driver mimic the original really well, but I think that this figure really is just a victim of, there was a mystique surrounding the unreleased Mech Driver one, and that's really all it was. Like, I think that had that figure been released on a single card back then, it would have been the brunt of all kinds of criticism. I think that this was just a case of, like, well, this is an unreleased figure and therefore appealing, but really a flawed design. And I feel like, especially in the era of Pursuit of Cobra, they, especially when they had, like, a whole desert theme to it, they could have made an amazing newly sculpted Desert Scorpion figure. And so this, to me, just by comparison to the stuff that was coming out at that era, just really falls short. Like, and I like the character. I'm a big fan of the original, but this figure just, it's kind of all over the place to me. Like, I don't hate it, but I definitely don't love it either.
I must say as well, I don't blame them for using that Snake Eyes head, because it's the closest thing you've got. I mean, it works. Like, it's the same head almost. But it's the fact that, all I can see is Snake Eyes with it. If they'd have gone, like a new head sculpt with that whole top section being completely different, and that kind of, the goggles being all wrap around, like really thick with the little kind of, all of those different elements to it. If you add those elements to it to take away, so that just the mouthpiece is just the Snake Eyes part, then it works. But unfortunately, for me, like we've said, it just doesn't do enough to say it's Desert Scorpion, which is weird.
Honestly, like, I really think it's actually a pretty genius build, really. I mean, like,
that's the part that's pulling it all back together. It's because it's like those parts do kind of translate, don't they?
They do, but I think it's also like they've pulled them from such iconic, Snake Eyes and Zartan. It's like certain figures, like, I don't know, like later on, like Treadmark, for example, he's all reused parts, but like it really captures the essence of the character, and it doesn't have anything new. It's just those parts work together, and none of them feel like overly iconic the way that the stuff used on Desert Scorpion does. Yeah,
I think that's the problem. You're right. Okay, well, in any case, out of the three that we've talked about, Skullbuster, Tollbooth, and Desert Scorpion, Justin, which is your least favourite out of the three?
I'd say Skullbuster, definitely. It had a lot of potential, but fell short in some key areas, and those forearms just ruined the whole thing for me.
It's like he's got four arms. Adam.
Back to the zoo you go, knuckle dragging Skullbuster.
I have to agree.
Enjoy your banana.
Skullbuster does hit third place in that little group, which is a shame because it's a range Viper. They are always bad, but the forearms have just really ruined it. I mean, I'd probably let the colour scheme go, that way if the forearms were smaller, but as it stands, it just makes those other issues kind of stand out a bit. Justin, what's your middle? What's your second place?
I would say Desert Scorpion's my second place.
Okay, and
definitely.
And Adam?
Ditto.
Okay, so it looks like I'm also going to be saying Desert Scorpion second place. So we know the winner of this one. All three of us are going with Tollbooth, and there's a reason for it. He's amazing, and it kind of goes to show, because that's another boss fight head, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
So it goes to show that when those guys were doing the head sculpts, that they just bring so much incredible detail to those heads, to those figures. It really does make a difference, I think, in some cases. So congratulations, Tollbooth. You're moving on to face Wide Scope in the next round. Yeah, so let's continue with round one, but on the on the Eastern Conference, and that is Night Force Lieutenant Falcon, Cesspool, and Keel Hall. I'm going to take this one first, and I'm going to talk about Falcon for a little while. So let's go back, guys, to the 25th, and the first time we laid eyes on that initial Lieutenant Falcon. Just as a sidebar, Justin and Adam, well, Justin first, take me through your thoughts when you first saw that Lieutenant Falcon.
The original 25th anniversary one?
Original 25th from the comic pack.
You're not like looking at my reviews so you can talk about whatever I say.
No, actually, I haven't. I don't have that. I just heard a click, so Adam has definitely run over to check on it. Go on. What were your first? What was that initial thought?
And hindsight is always 20/20, but I really love the Falcon character.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It seemed like a kind of somebody who was definitely missing in the modern era, and I was excited from that perspective. I think to see an update. I don't remember being all that impressed with the end result. That funky head sculpt and
the head,
the arms, and I remember it came with some pretty cool accessories, but the figure itself was just kind of
and it's just proportionally all over the shop.
Yeah,
or a lot of the kind of like things that now you kind of look at the legs and the arms and the torsos now, the figures nowadays, and you've got real like difference, like dynamic changes where like say the knee pads tuck in or pull in like the trousers at the top and the bottom and like the bottom of the thighs and the top of the calves. So you've got like shapes kind of really going round, and some of the builds back then would just like the legs would just be straight down, the same width all the way down, no like dynamic changes, no kind of detail, no kind of muscle definition or tone or anything. And as good as those figures were initially when they came out, and how excited I was when I saw a lot of them, Falcon stood out as like a very poor figure for me. Possibly one of the worst, I think, in the whole 25th line. And that's saying something. And even though, like I said, that it was a great, a really good like initial run of figures, and we were all jumping on them and loving them. But my goodness. Anyway, so we get the new one in the 7-pack.
I don't get to talk about my experience.
Oh, sorry, Adam. Sorry, Adam. Go on. Your first thoughts when you saw him.
It's good. It's funny because it's actually contrarian to yours. At the time that figure came out, I had not really started collecting modern era yet. I was still trying to finish the vintage line, and I was really close, so I was sort of ignoring that stuff. And that was actually the figure that got me to start buying them.
Wow.
Because I am such a G.I. Joe the movie fanboy. And I love Falcon, obviously. And when I saw it at Walmart, I was in college at the time, and I walk in there and I see a 2-pack in the year 2008 that has Nemesis Enforcer and a Falcon. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me, right?
Well.
So, I mean, my jaw hit the floor. So, yeah, I mean, of course, looking at it now, I can see that it's a pile of garbage. But back then, like, other than the fact that I thought his uniform looked like it had contracted jaundice in the 20 years since the original figure came out. At that time, not owning any other figures with modern construction, like, I didn't identify that he had suicide wrists or whatever, or basketball shoulders or pencil legs. Like, at that time, I just thought, like, this is so awesome. Like, I haven't had a Falcon figure since I was, 10 years old. So,
well, context is an important thing here, because like you say, if you hadn't been collecting them or really kind of getting into them until that figure, so obviously there's a difference there. I mean, you look at some of the figures in the new Sculpt era, and I was digging them back when they were coming out, but like it's fact that you look back now and you think, God, the proportions are all over the place. They look like a Rob Liefeld image. But anyway, like I kind of feel like when it came to like the new version of Falcon, I was like, yeah, this is cooler. I still wasn't like fully like, I don't know, I wasn't fully all the way there with it. I liked the build, and I thought it was really cool, and it was the Marauders version, everything, and it's like, yeah, okay, cool. They've put him in the Marauders team in those colours. Neat. I like the idea. Very cool. But it wasn't until this Night Force version came out that I was like, oh, that is so cool. And it looked, I just thought this was like, this is the Falcon right here. Removable beret. Amazing head sculpt. Like really, really full of personality again. He does look a little bit older than I would think Falcon is. There's an age to that head a little bit, especially with the hair. But they are matching the hair colour to the original Night Force figure that tufts out the sides of the beret, so you can't really, you can't blame them for that. But yeah, I don't know, I just thought it was brilliant. I thought the colour was awesome, slightly different to the original Night Force, but again, it's in the same ballpark. Like, there's no significant changes, so it sticks really close. The only thing I didn't really understand with the figure were those weird shoulder pads. I just thought they really stand out, and they really take away from what would be the perfect Falcon for me. And that's all I would say about him in terms of what I don't like. It's just those weird shoulder pads. I just don't think they go with the rest of the figure. I don't mind the knee pads, that they don't bother me too much, but the shoulder pads are like, why? Anyway, yeah, but this figure for me is a brilliant one. Really happy with this guy. And yeah, he's one of my favorites. And as Justin said, he's one of those characters that massive in the movie. Odd that they made him such a such a loser when he's the
gold-plated goof off.
When he's a Green Beret, you kind of think, well, you shouldn't be a loser. You should be pretty good at what you do.
He is good. Watch this over my shoulder. Now pretend those books are a couple of Cobra creeps. Look out!
Falcon, you piece of shit. Yeah. So Justin, what were your thoughts on Night Force Falcon?
The figure itself, I tend to agree with you. I think the Pursuit of Cobra Dusty base figure, or at least that's where the most identifiable parts are. I don't remember if the torso, I think the torso is different, but yeah, the arms and legs I believe were all Pursuit of Cobra Dusty, and I like the Pursuit of Cobra sculpts. I think they're really well sculpted and well designed. I agree. I don't know where the heck those shoulder pads are supposed to come, or where they, what they attach to, or anything like that. If I had any complaint, it was that, kind of going back to how the original 25th anniversary Falcon was executed, we never really got a good, just regular Falcon figure.
Yeah,
we got, that shoddy 25th anniversary. Then we got the weird Marauders one that, was kind of Marauders, kind of not. And then we got the Night Force version, which obviously was a needed update. But I kind of felt like just getting a regular standard, awesome, military style Falcon Green Beret figure was something that we really was kind of lacking in the line, something we didn't get. And, I wasn't a huge fan of this Night Force update before getting something like that. That being said, the figure itself is great. Really good articulation. I like kind of the stocky Pursuit of Cobra Dusty build. The head sculpt is fantastic with a removable beret. Obviously this kind of it didn't start the whole Night Force avalanche, but it certainly kept it rolling, or made it roll a little bit faster than it had with just a couple little Rise of Cobra entries from before.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a great figure that only, if I were to say it suffered from anything, it only suffered from the fact that I wish we had gotten a standard Falcon figure or a decent standard Falcon figure that we never really got. But the figure itself is still, the Night Force Falcon is still a great figure.
And Adam?
Well, originally there was a 2009 Night Force Falcon that was supposed to come out in the final wave of 25th anniversary, which made use of that same bad construction from the comic pack version. And so compared to that, this looks amazing. But I kind of echo everything you guys said again. Like because I'm such a fan of Falcon, I really like some characters. I feel like it's okay to deviate from their original version, and some I really don't. And like in the case of this one, the shoulder pads and knee pads just drive me crazy. I don't know why, but like to me it's not Falcon, and it's also kind of aesthetically it's off-putting. It's like, why does he have armor on top of clothes? Like it just seems
work. It doesn't work.
It just seems strange.
Yeah.
And funny enough, I think the best, most identifiable parts about this figure really all come from that original Comic Pack 2008 version, because the web gear, the backpack, the shotgun, like that's all from him. So really the only great part about this for me is the head sculpt and beret, which came from the 7-pack. So this figure really doesn't do a lot for me, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, like those shoulder pads just don't do it. Like, it's what I don't get it. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any design sense, really. But at the same time, I do like the figure.
Well, and also I should say, like, this isn't really like accurate to Night Force Falcon either. Like, because the sleeves are so dark, and then he's got the darker pants. Like, he doesn't even really look like Night Force Falcon. He just kind of looks like whatever, Like, he's not original. He's not really Night Force. Like,
I mean, it's in the same ballpark though. I mean, it's gray sleeves as opposed to the black shirt. It's green accessories that are green accessories, and it's brown trousers and brown trousers. I mean, I know what you're saying about it's a different tone and everything, but it's in the same ballpark for me.
Well, I only bring that up because if you look at the Night Force concept that came out that same year, they tried really hard to keep so many of those figures vintage accurate. So why deviate here? That's the only. I'm guessing
the deviation was because of the matching it to the other figures, right? To the other Night Force figures of that ilk. Like Repeat is quite similar. Spearhead, strangely enough, is quite similar in terms of the brown. But yeah, in any case, we also have Cesspool, who is an absolute belter of a figure. Adam, do you want to take us through that one?
Man, so right out of the gate, I guess we just have to talk about how awesome this head sculpt is. And again, a little personal bias showing through here, but this was one of the first figures that I illustrated the card art for, and I couldn't believe that I got away with how grotesque I drew that face. Like, I mean, like, I remember thinking, like, oh, this will be like the first pass, and they'll tell me no when they let it through. I was, you could be kidding me, because I mean, I drew like so much flesh that it practically showed through to his skull.
What?
The level of detail and just how disgusting it is. I mean, the paint job doesn't do it justice. If you really look at this thing under a magnifying glass, like it's horrific. So amazing sculpt there. Again, we're already starting to see more reuse of the airtight parts, so that's a little off-putting. And then of course the sci-fi legs again were so obvious, and the Techno Viper torso is so obvious. So I mean, for me, some of the part stuff is a little bit of a bother, but I mean, I don't want it to sound like I'm complaining. This is an amazing figure. You really would be hard-pressed to do better with what was available at the time. I mean, other than the robot arm, but no big deal there. One little note was this figure was originally supposed to come with the backpack that came with Arctic Destro, the water-squirting larger pack, and I think there was some kind of issue at the factory with the pump mechanism inside of it that they weren't able to do it, and so he ended up getting Barbecue's backpack, but that's why you'll see on the card art he actually has Arctic Destro's pack.
Interesting.
But yeah, I mean, big praise for this figure. It's very cool. And also at this time, like, Cesspool is right from the height of my childhood Joe fandom, so I didn't foresee figures from that era showing up for a long time, so this was a very welcome addition at the time.
Fantastic. Justin?
Yeah, I agree pretty much with everything Adam said. Cesspool is a highlight of the FSS for me, certainly a highlight of this FSS, a highlight of most of the FSSs, honestly. I love the 90s era G.I. Joe, where a lot of people kind of, besmirch it. I really was into all those different sub-teams. And Cesspool, I have a weird affinity for cyborg creations, kind of. And even though the modern update didn't have that robotic arm, it still kind of brought the character of the figure to life and was a really great update. I thought, the Techno Viper vest wasn't quite as effective as it could have been at replicating his raised serpentine torso, but without doing like a whole newly tooled torso piece, which obviously the club couldn't do for the FSS. It's about as good as they could have done, and I think they kind of rolled with the punches there effectively enough. And the parts, the 30th anniversary parts with Airtight and Sci-Fi, are all really well sculpted. That head sculpt is just spectacular, and the card art is pretty fantastic too. So this figure pretty much had it all. There was nothing to nitpick as far as I was concerned where this guy came along.
I have to mirror both of what you guys are saying. He's an amazing figure. Again, the only issues are the fact that they didn't kind of go for like a completely different torso build for that kind of Cobra chest thing. But for me, if this is going to be like a modern update as opposed to a complete rip of the original 1980s 90s version, then I would have to say they've completely and utterly knocked it out of the park. Like, I mean, there's as a pursuit of Cobra upgrade, it's exceptional, and that's something that I would have accepted as the upgrade to Cesspool and been happy and gone, yeah, that's what he should look like in a modern way. And the other thing is, like, I find it quite funny with the robot arms. There are so many kind of characters where you're like, is it a robot arm or has it just been painted funny? Like, does Major Blood have a robot arm or what? Like, is it a prosthetic arm on Cesspool or is it just like, a nice cute design touch? And so I don't know. I may have been inclined, or wouldn't have been upset if they'd have painted a gold arm on that side, kind of C3PO style, where it's just like a slightly, it's just a different color, but it's the same thing effectively on the other side symmetrically. But I think doing it this way, doing it this in this kind of modern style, was probably the best thing they could have done. And I love the fact that they used, instead of just a Cobra sigil, which, you've got that huge kind of raised Cobra, slightly different. It almost looks like the Cobra kind of head that you see on all of the Sunbow helicarrier, or they've got like a base in the desert, or they've got like a submarine. That looks like the kind of Cobra head sculpt you'd see, on one of those things. So I'm kind of glad they went with that kind of more toxic logo, almost like Compound Z, tying him into that kind of side of things. And yeah, I brilliant, amazing figure.
Bonus shout for this figure too was that at the time this was the first release we'd gotten of the briefcase full of money since the very rare Moneybags Destro figure. So I mean that was just an awesome inclusion too.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, the I was going to say that he won the FSS card art battle as well. Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen that. So congratulations, Adam. Absolutely brilliant. So okay, let's just cut to the chase. Keelhaul next. Justin, take us through Keelhaul.
Yeah, I get what the club was kind of trying to do here. I do really like the new head sculpt, the fact that they invested some money in making that happen, and along with Tollbooth was another 1985 figure that desperately needed an update. I will say, the Rise of Cobra Hawk figure as a base, didn't really. It looks kind of bland. I mean, most of those Rise of Cobra figures were all in black, and seeing it in different colors almost makes it worse because it just looks exceptionally undetailed and just kind of flat and not, when you look at this figure compared to the figure that was sculpted, 30 years ahead of it, and the 30-year-old figure looks more intricately sculpted and well designed than the modern update, and you've got a little bit of an issue going on. And while I do really like the head sculpt and I like the inclusion of the character, and I liked some of the kind of unique little accessories they threw along with it, the coffee mug, the flag, and the binoculars or whatever were all nice touches. Ultimately, the figure is just kind of, it's not all that exciting.
I agree, but for me, the worst thing about this figure, because like you said, the head sculpt, absolutely sensational. It's so good that the rest of the figure just can't keep up.
Yeah,
but the
maybe
legs.
That's why the figure looks so bland. Is just because the head sculpt is so detailed. Yeah.
What are the legs about? It's like they've stuck two pipe cleaners up his bits. Like that's what it looks like. It looks like he's got. He looks like the last time I saw legs like that, they were hanging out at the bottom of a nest. So I'm not quite sure about that. And it really does have an aesthetic, like it gives him this weird look where where other characters that use those legs, probably the female characters, don't. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Like it just doesn't look right at all. And I think the jacket has too many details on it. It kind of looks modern, where in actual, it looks like that jacket from, too much like that jacket from Rise of Cobra, and it needs to be far more like General Hawk's kind of coat, something like that, as in the original General Hawk, not the
right,
not the Rise of Cobra one. So yeah, I think really cool, like. I don't know, really cool opportunity here. The head sculpt is almost good enough to take this figure, to get you through it. But when you look at the legs, it just makes me laugh. What about you, Adam?
I feel like you guys said everything there's to say. I mean, the head sculpt is so awesome. Accessories are great, but that jacket, I mean, it looks like a Kawasaki Ninja motorcycle jacket or something.
It does. I mean, padding, yeah.
A new secondary with like a really bulked up collar and with all the medals and ribbons sculpted on could have taken this thing from like a 1 to a 10, but he's got like $1 million head with a $1 body. It just the pairing just doesn't work. Like. And I love the character, and I think it's like Keelhaul's one of those figures, especially that feels very special because you had to buy this enormous thing to get him.
Yeah.
And so it felt really cool to get him here, but it under-delivered for such a big character. I think
I'd have even been okay with them using different legs. Like if they'd given him a bit more, bulk in the legs, I would have been able to get over the jacket because I think it works still. Yeah. But look at them. Anyway, let's stop looking at his tiny legs.
I'll say one thing. This really kind of almost makes me a little remorseful now that we're not getting a Battle Corps Keelhaul update to make use of that head again, but rectify the body because it's such a good head sculpt.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And it's such a shame to see it kind of lose points because of the other attributes.
I'm not a fan of those shoulders either. Like when you kind of move the arms and that kind of shoulder joint sticks out.
Oh yeah, because you can see the blue shirt through the openings of the secondary.
Oh god, yeah. Not a fan of those kind of elements of it. But anyway, let's go through quickly. What's your least favorite, Adam, of the three?
tough. Gotta be Keel Hall.
And Justin?
I'm going to agree with Keel Hall on this one.
I have to agree as well. It's a three-way get lost Keel Hall. I mean, it's a shame because the head sculpt's amazing, but the body is cack.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to Keel Hall.
Okay. Who wins out then, Adam, between, and we won't do middle, we'll just do the winner, but who wins out between Falcon and Cesspool for you?
No question, Cesspool.
I thought you were going to say Falcon and just really screw with us.
Yeah.
Justin?
Yeah, it's got to be Cesspool.
I was hoping you'd go against the grain so that it would make my vote really important. But I have to agree. This has been a rather easy run so far. It's got to be Cesspool. So let's move on to the next and final round one round. And that is Bombardier, Big Bear, and Dragonsky. So, Justin, let's start with you again on this one, and let's go with Bombardier. Take us through that figure, please.
Dave, are you going to be listening to this?
I should probably go first here, but I'm going to let you do it because I want you to go under the bus first. Yes.
Yeah,
Dave Tree doesn't listen to
Dave Tree going to be listening to this,
Of course
Chris,
not. Of course not. He
Okay,
doesn't even come on the show anymore.
I get what the club was doing, and I'm really thrilled for that they gave Dave, his kind of discovery a place in modern era history. I think that's really fantastic, and the thought behind the figure is really terrific. And I give big kudos to Dave for what he did, kind of discovering it. Big kudos to the club for making it happen. That being said, I'm really not a huge fan of the overabundance of these figure parts. Maybe if they just done it with Bombardier, I'd probably be okay with it. And actually, I probably shouldn't take out my frustrations on Bombardier itself, because really it was the figures that came after him that really kind of drove the opinion into the ground. So it's not necessarily his fault, but yeah, I mean, I appreciate what the club is trying to do. I like how they kind of work in the Action Force characters very much. And obviously the card art is great, and I'm really psyched that Dave Tree got a place in G.I. Joe lore. It's just the figure itself, just looking at it as a figure, it doesn't excite me a whole lot. I love the concept.
Yeah, I think where the Action Force characters in the G.I. Joe Collectors Club fall short is that they're always going to be repaints of 25th anniversary figures, because for some reason, obviously where it has changed has been Gaucho. It's almost like they were waiting for that Gung Ho to be released before they did the Gaucho one, which is the right call, because I mean that's one of the only figures that you can really look at in that lineup and go, I'm not counting Big Ben in this because he is an amazing figure, but he's not from the Action Force. He's from a G.I. Joe 90s character. So, and again, I've nothing against that. I love the character. I love the figure. I was a big fan of that American wave of figures anyway. But when you're looking at the kind of Action Force characters from like the Palitoy era going into what the new, like almost like when they started using the G.I. Joe kind of figure bases, it's just that everyone has to be a repaint of a 25th anniversary figure. And that, I think, like, when you're getting to, like, 6, 7, 8 kind of FSS kind of elements, you're kind of thinking, right, okay, let's stop using 25th anniversary parts now. We're kind of beyond that, because when we use them, they stand out like a sore forearm, or it's just kind of like, I don't think it should be used anymore. So I think that's where Action Force struggle in it. As much as Dave and I were going nuts when they were revealing them, but the fact that Jammer really suffered from some poor part choices. With an amazing head sculpt. Bombardier has the same problem. Quarrel with the Scarlet. Quarrel, but
Captain Skip.
Skip. I mean, what an opportunity there to really use some awesome parts. Maybe even I know they've used Falcon and it's Falcon, but the removable beret. At least have a removable beret. At least there are other heads that will work on. So why go that route with it? It just didn't make any sense to me. So yeah, where that happens, and this is a massive culprit of it. And unfortunately, we'd had a Grand Slam. We'd had who are the other ones it was based on, Justin? Not Flash.
We'd had Flash and Blades prior to this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's like,
And tripwire.
And tripwire. Yeah, so
Tripwire,
you go like, holy crap, like how many more times? But again, this was the shock trooper of its day, I think.
His driver too, actually, if you look at that figure as well, had kind of some kind of modification of it, yeah.
Here's where I'm going to be the dissenting voice. I love this figure.
What?
I really do. I think the head sculpt is dated, but other than that, this body sculpt actually holds up reasonably well. And now I totally hear what you guys are saying about all the reuse of the tooling, and I agree with it. But I am deeply invested in the story behind this figure, having known Ron Connor and Dave Tree, and I'm sure there is some degree of bias. But separate of that, I just think the color scheme was very striking. Like, I can't explain what it is about that combination of olive drab, gray, red, yellow, and that clear blue visor, but like, it just really works for me. It's a very, like, if they had done a whole sub team in this color palette, I wouldn't have minded. And the accessory choice is really unique. Like that giant missile launcher drone tank he comes with had only ever been used once before and never again since.
What I love about that is the fact they used the cancelled logo as well. Like the
that's a
special
cool
logo.
touch. Yeah.
And the rifles he comes with are really unique too. I mean, I don't know. For some reason, this figure really works for me, and I don't think it has anything to do with me having worked on it or knowing those guys or anything. It just speaks to me. Like, sometimes you just have those ones that are sort of inexplicable, and for whatever reason, the aesthetic of this is just like those colors. It's just, Don't
get me wrong, I don't dislike the figure. What my issues are with the fact that it always seems to be like the figure that's already been utilized 6 or 7 times. It just gets a repaint. I mean, we'd had Scarlet, we'd had Glenda, we'd had another. I think we may even have had another Scarlet in that time period before having Quarrel, and it's just like, oh, for sake. But it was always going to be that way. It was always going to be a repainted Scarlet. That makes the most sense. But you're kind of hoping that time goes by, that you get an update of Scarlet that's a good update of Scarlet, and they can repaint her. But that never really transpired as such. And it was the same. I fully expected this to just be a repaint of Flash, as it were. But I really think a different head would have been great. I think that would have made a world of difference. A different head. The color scheme's great. I mean, the original Bombardier kind of reveal was so like, what the is this? Like, where did this? And when you see the sub team and all of the vehicles and all of the other characters that were going to be in that sub team, it's like, holy, this would have been sweet. And it's probably an element of unreleased, the kind of like that comes with, like, we were like probably masturbating to the unreleased Desert Scorpion at some stage, but like this, would have been really, really cool. Again, I just think sometimes it's just an afterthought, Adam. I think sometimes it's like, well, we can do it like this, that they get what they want, job done. And it's like, why can't you just put a little bit, like they've done in other figures, where they've gone the extra mile and said, well, let's do this for it. It's almost like, because it's Action Force, only a few people are going to care, and those few people are going to buy it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I kind of feel like that's how it's looked upon sometimes.
I mean, I definitely agree that a new head sculpt would have helped to give him more of his own identity, but I also think that when this figure came out, it really spoke to me as like, this is the kind of stuff that should be in the FSS. Like, a major character like Falcon or Keel Hall that can't be executed properly shouldn't be used here. But a figure like Bombardier that no one outside of a very hardcore small contingent of Joe fans really has any attachment to is the perfect inclusion in something like this. So I don't know. I love it.
Well, okay, that's a good conversation on Bombardier, really. Let's move on to Big Bear and Justin.
Yeah, Big Bear is he's a pretty cool figure. He kind of unique about him is that he used that. I don't know if this is the first time the Pursuit of Cobra canceled Arctic Duke, or Rise of Cobra canceled Arctic Duke parts were made available for purchase. I know it's happened at least once since Big Bear, I think. But yeah, I think at the time it was the first time we were getting those parts in hand, which was a pretty cool landmark occasion. His head sculpt is really excellent. They did a great job sculpting that head as well. And unlike Keel Hall, the rest of the body sculpt kind of retains the same level of detail as the head sculpt did. Arctic Duke feels like another one of those figures that was mostly desirable because of its rarity. In execution, the parts are cool, big baggy, highly articulated, winter coat parts, but the jacket that goes over the top of it kind of reduces articulation quite a bit, is really big and bulky and not very functional. That being said, I mean, Big Bear's a decent figure. We were looking for some filler for the October Guard. I believe the convention set had been released by this point.
Oh yeah, I think it had.
I think it'd been out for a couple of years maybe. So they really needed to fill in some of those empty slots, and Big Bear did a good job of doing that. And the accessories were good. You know, it was a very good, solid figure. It wasn't, my absolute favorite, but yeah, it was a very good, well done update.
I thought he was great. I love the bulk on him because he's like a big dude, and he was almost like the kind of not replacement, but like the upgrade to Horror Show, wasn't he?
Right.
Like back then, almost like how Heavy Duty was supposed to be like the Roadblock replacement, and so on and so forth. And I don't know. I really dug the original figure. I thought the original was great. I loved the. I don't know. I love the color. I love the head sculpt. I love there was something different about him in a certain way. I think this version of the figure is definitely not an identical representation of the original.
Totally not.
This is a Pursuit of Cobra upgrade in how I like to describe them, and many others do as well. This is one of those ones where it's like, yeah, well, he's in the October Guard. It's bloody freezing wherever they go, so he's going to have to be bulked up. He's going to have to be in all his gear and so on and so forth. So I dig what they've done. I think the color scheme really tie them together. So I think you still know what this figure is, even like if your only experience of Big Bear is that original one. This new modern version, when you can look at it and go, yes, that's Big Bear.
I do have a confession to make. I kind of have a little bit of a vendetta against Big Bear because I was a diehard Larry Hama comics fan growing up, and the fact that we're finally getting an October Guard figure, and it's whoever the hell this weird guy is instead of the people that were actually in the comic. So I've kind of got this little chip on my shoulder about Big Bear to begin with.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, like, I'm down with any recreation of any original or any update to any original character and figure from whatever wave it was, so f*** you, Justin Bell. I'm just kidding. Adam, what about yourself? What about Big Bear for you?
More Bizarro round out of me. I don't like this figure. I think that the head sculpt is awesome, as all the new sculpts are, but having already seen this tooling for that unreleased Alpine figure and the unreleased Duke figure and the unreleased Snow Serpent figure, all of which we'd already seen at this point.
Already seen but never had.
Well, correct. Well, I did have the Duke, but whatever. Anyway.
Adam is the special collector, unlike
an elitist.
Yeah, but it just, I don't know. And also, I had Big Bear as a kid, and I really liked that figure, and my vision of him is like a real life character was that he almost looks like he's wearing like a button down shirt, like he's much more form fitting, and then you see this massive armorized version of, and again, why does he have these like armor plated shoulder pads on when he's wearing a parka? Like, they
love shoulder pads all of a sudden, don't they?
Yeah, and also like, I mean, this is just like stupid little stuff, but like one of the things that really sticks out about Big Bear to me is that he had a yellow grenade on his chest. So this one has silver. Like that, when you're sort of a more generic design like he is, little accents like that develop the character, and so that kind of took away. And like, I don't know. Why does he come with this like ridiculous oversized rocket launcher that I don't know. I don't hate it, but I definitely don't love it either. And like, also he's a more like deep, like brighter green color, I guess, whereas the original looks like he's got a little bit more of like a sort of turquoise blue tinge to him that I thought was a unique color. So this one felt a lot more like generic military to me. It's just lacking something. Again, like great head sculpt, but the overall just something's a little off.
Okay, so that leaves us with Dragonsky. And Justin, take us through Dragonsky and another October Guard.
Another October Guard, yeah. And Dragonsky actually was a figure that I really, really enjoyed. I mean, I loved him when, he felt like a kind of a hole that was in the October Guard roster. Even back when we were getting the comic pack updates, they took a while to get us a Dragonsky update. He was kind of a vacancy for a little while. So he sort of had that mythos about him of being, ironically, one of the October Guard members who actually survived, yet he didn't have a figure for a while, while the dead guys all had figures. but eventually that got rectified, first with the club and their convention set, the Steel Brigade, kind of Urban Rain version of Dragonsky, and then they did it in the comic pack as well. And then, once again, when they released the convention set, who was absent but Dragonsky once again. So it was nice to get not just a Dragonsky figure, but a somewhat comic book accurate Dragonsky figure in his purple uniform, where he's kind of most well known when you look at G.I. Joe Annual #2, I guess, with Michael Golden doing the October Guard and in the way he did. That's kind of what everybody thinks of when they think of Dragonsky, and this was a pretty decent way of replicating what that figure looked like. Agreed that the airtight tooling is feeling even more tired at this point. Considering it's the second and a half time in this FSS that we've gotten it. It was kind of, again, really, are you serious? But the parts themselves are very cool. And they did some, I can't remember exactly what unique thing they did with the torso armor. It's something a little bit different.
It's at the lower torso of Rise of Cobra Flash armor. Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And that kind of added a little bit of different flair to it. Yeah, the cod piece makes it, absolutely.
The old knob protector. Yeah.
But no, I ended up, I like this figure quite a bit. It's it's definitely up there in one of my favorites on the FSS. It's a character that people didn't have in modern era yet. It's a somewhat obscure character, redone in a pretty unique way with some interesting colors. So the club kind of ticked off all the right boxes for this one.
I love the fact they used that Firefly Rise of Cobra. I want to say, I always forget the vehicle. Like it's the fly one that shoots.
Cobra gunship.
The gunship, yeah. I love the fact they used that Firefly helmet for it. I think it looks so striking, and in the different color. It really, I mean, I still recognize it, but I'm not thinking Firefly from the gunship. I'm thinking Dragonsky when I see it, and it just looks brilliant, I think. Yeah. Adam, what about yourself?
Yeah, this figure was shown before FSS 1 had even started shipping. I think we touched on that last time. But
yes, you're right. Yep.
Yeah, and so there was a lot of this is a pretty crazy thing to think that there was 176 days till this one started from when the last one ended. So by the time we got this figure, and he shipped in the very last wave of FSS2, from the time we first laid eyes on this figure to the time we actually had him in hand was like over 2 years.
Wow.
So there's a lot of anticipation built up.
I think at that point, it almost becomes like you don't really give a shit anymore as well. Like you go from anticipation to like, oh, okay, whatever. Because you're always on to the next thing before you've got it in hand. I mean, I'm already thinking about the final 12, and we haven't even had all of FSS 7 in a hand yet. So it's like I'm already thinking 2 things ahead, 2.5 things ahead. Sorry, carry on, Adam.
No, yeah. I feel you, and that's true. I mean, that can go both ways. I almost feel like when you wait so long, it's like when a joke goes too far and then it becomes funny again. Like we waited so long that it became interesting. But the inclusion of the I forget the era now. Was it the Valor's Venom torch backpack with the flame piece? So cool.
Yeah,
that's a great accessory. And I think that because of the mixing and matching with the helmet and the additional secondary piece and the cool flamethrower and the color change, you almost don't even realize upon first glance that this figure actually is made of the airtight tooling. And I think that's the best way to use parts like this. And that's why it's funny how I was so dismissive of airtight in round 1, and yet I look at this, which is literally the same figure in a different color, and I like it 100 times better. And I think it's just because
subtle changes, though.
Yeah,
subtle changes that almost do that. But that's the beauty of a repaint. Is either the paint is so good that you don't see the other figure anymore. Or, like you say, you add a couple of changes to it, and all of a sudden it's absolutely, completely different. The only thing I would have said is that just the legs strike me as airtight, but looking at the rest of it, I wouldn't have thought for a second that we were looking at an airtight figure. So I think, that like you say, there's those subtle changes make a hell of a difference.
Yeah, and that color combo is very unique.
Gorgeous.
I mean, if you look at the whole G.I. Joe line and you think of characters that are purple, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, like
Skullbuster.
Techno Viper, Dice, Chaos, like they're all like one solid purple and then a blend of other colors. But this one using the two-tone purple is so unique. it really works on so many different levels. It's a very good build.
And I love the fact they've just plonked the little red star on there as well on the belt. I think that's really cool. On his cod piece. Yeah, okay, so I'm seeing a pattern evolving here on this particular one. Okay, guys, Justin, take me through your worst of the three, please.
Oh man, it kills me because I love Dave Tree and I love the story behind Bombardier, but from a pure kind of execution standpoint, I think that's probably it's close between Bombardier and Big Bear, but I think ultimately it's going to be Bombardier.
You're fired, Adam.
Yeah, I'll show myself out.
See you later, Big Bear.
Wow. Okay, so I do get the casting vote. Yes, I'm going to say my least favorite is Dragonsky. Just to make this the really awkward, how the do we deal with this scenario? I'm just kidding. I actually love Dragonsky.
You want to watch the world burn, don't you?
I'm actually going to say my least favourite at this time is Bombardier, and it's. I know I feel awful for doing it, but it's only because all they had to do was give him a different head, and I know that does take away from the fact that he was just a repainted Flash in the first place, but. We unfortunately are hampered with the 25th, and that's what really me over and me off with the Action Force characters. It's always just going to be a repaint of a 25th figure, unless you get that modern update again. Yeah. Unless you get that figure again in the 30th, like we did with Gung Ho, and so for that reason, I'm sorry Bombardier, I'm sorry Dave Tree, I'm sorry Ron Connor, I'm sorry the entire United Kingdom, I'm sorry Bob Breakin, I'm sorry Palatoy, I'm sorry my wife and family.
You're getting Brexited right out.
I'm sorry for Adam. I'm sorry for Justin, even though he's also put Bombardier in the bottom. I'm sorry for everybody that I've upset. It's going to have to be Bombardier. So that means that...
Well, I just want to say for the record that had the vote been up to me, Bombardier would have won this round.
Wow. So we're going to go with Dragonsky, aren't we, Justin?
Yes, definitely.
I'm going with Dragonsky. Justin's going to 2-1, I'm afraid, Adam. And it's sad because had I been in a different mood, I may even have just been like, you guys, I'm going Bombardier. I'm going full force, and I've gone low force on a full force episode. I feel force. So yeah, Dragonsky goes through to face Cesspool, but before Dragonsky faces the ugliest but most beautiful figure in the entire universe, spoiler alert. We are going to have the Wide Scope versus Tollbooth matchup. Round 2! So now that round 1 is done and dusted, this becomes a quick fire round as we have less to discuss here. But of course, guys, feel free to explain why you have chosen the figure you have. This round, as I said, is between Wide Scope and Tollbooth. Justin, who do you give the win to here and why?
Oh man, this is. I think this is the toughest matchup we've had so far on these FSS competitions.
Totes.
I love Wide Scope. I love Lamont. I love his paint scheme. I love all that stuff. But I gotta give the edge to Tollbooth.
Tollbooth.
He's got the new head sculpt.
Yeah.
He fills that role for 1985. It's a very, very close call, but it's a very narrow victory. But I got to give it to Tollbooth.
Yadam.
This is rough.
If this is the hardest thing we ever have to do in life, then we are very fortunate people.
Tollbooth is a great figure with a great accessory loadout, and I realize that I constantly moan about Shock Trooper reuse, but I have to let personal bias seep through here. This was the first unique character I illustrated card art for. He is me, I am him. His colors are awesome. He comes with a dog. It's on his vest. We're going Wide Scope. It's up to you, Chris.
Oh boy.
Holy shiznits. This is where I lose friends. Well, okay, let me talk it through. So, Wide Scope, kind of like bringing out a kind of really untouched character, someone that had very little background, very little use in any other media, but at the same time, this figure made him very, very cool. Made you kind of go back and check the original out.
Talking about Tollbooth or widescope here? 'Cause that qualifies for both.
Yeah, that's a very good point. But actually it does. But okay. So thanks for ruining that for me, Justin. Lamont is really cool. I love the fact he's in the sniffing position. I think that's just brilliant. The shock trooper thing at the time. If we were talking at the time, I'd probably have to. I don't know what I'd be leaning towards. But honestly, when I first saw Tollbooth, I was like, yes, that is just yes. I love it. I think they did a really good job with him. I really wish they'd given him the waistcoat. I'm dragging this on too long. I'm just going to say... I'm going to lose so many friends here. I'm going to say Tollbooth goes through. Oh my god, I'm so sorry, Adam.
I almost hung up on you, Chris, but you pulled it out.
Well, that's not the first time you said that. So Tollbooth goes through to the next round, which isn't the final. It's like the semi-final, because we've got another classic figure that they've got to do battle against. So let's flip over to the Eastern Conference again and see what's going on there. And we've got... This round is between Cesspool and Dragonsky. Justin, who do you give the win to here and why?
Oh man, this is another tough one. Do I want the figure that just has half the airtight parts or all of the airtight parts?
That's amazing.
Ultimately, Cesspool, once he's got that nasty, awesome head sculpt.
Yeah.
He's got a slightly more interesting color scheme, and only half the airtight parts and the money bag. So I give it to Cesspool.
Jadam.
Yeah, this is like, it's funny. Last round was so difficult, and this round I'm like, I don't even have anything to say. It's obviously Cesspool. Come on.
Yeah, same Z's. It's Cesspool. Again, Dragonsky's awesome, but he's more solid than he is awesome, and I think let's face it, he got through in a group that was rather split. It wasn't an easy win to get through to that stage. So yeah, I mean, Cesspool is just an amazing figure. He won the FSS card up battle. And he might even win this. So anyway, Cesspool...
Yeah, when he does, can we put a toilet flushing sound in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cesspool goes through to the semi-final, the first final. The final is after that final. So
Round
technically
3.
this is just the semi-final. Round 3! We have Tollbooth versus Cesspool. So who do we have? Adam, who do you go with on this one? Who do you give the win to out of these two? Or do you want to talk through it? Whatever you want to do.
This actually becomes really tough again, because for the record, I didn't dislike Tollbooth at all. It's just, I have wide scope love.
Bias, I think that's called.
Yeah. But it's such a nasty word. It has implications.
You see, I went against bias by completely throwing the entire UK under the bus.
I tried to. I just really like that figure, but that's why I turned him into me. Tollbooth and Cesspool. I mean, I almost in my mind, I want to be like, well, Tollbooth comes with good accessories, but I'm like, yeah, so does Cesspool. And then I'm be like, Tollbooth has a great head sculpt. I'm like, yeah, so does Cesspool. Like, I'm trying to talk myself into letting Tollbooth win, and I just can't. Like, I think that Tollbooth is basically a perfect figure, and yet for some reason, which I can't really articulate, I gotta go with Cesspool.
Okay, so Cesspool takes the first hit in this battle. Justin.
Yeah, I've got Adam's back on this one. I mean, like you said, Tollbooth's got a great new head sculpt. Cesspool's got a better new head sculpt, in my opinion. Tollbooth's got some great accessories. Cesspool does too. Ultimately, I think Cesspool just has the edge and has a small edge in many small categories. And he doesn't have any one great thing that he does better than Tollbooth, but he's got enough small improvements that it adds up.
I think in this particular scenario, characterization does come through a little bit, doesn't it? And obviously Cesspool's far more interesting as a character. There's more layers to him, mostly skin layers on his face. He's been in more of the media, so again, he's been in the comic for like a huge run. Like I know Tollbooth has been in too, but he's grossly underused as a character. We've had hardly any development of that particular character over the years of him being in existence. So there's an element of mystery to him, but again, there isn't, because you look at him and you pretty much get everything you need just from looking at the character. With Cesspool, there's all of these different like layers to the character, the origins of the man and how he got his scar, and one of my favourite panels in a comic ever because it says splunge.
It doesn't take much to impress you.
It really doesn't. For a while, I was just going through comics that I loved and finding where they said either splooge or splunge and taking pictures of them and Instagramming them. I found them in more comics than you'd imagine, including Turtles comics, where I think Rocksteady gets his horn stuck in it's like a pipe on a submarine, and the water gushes in his face, and it does say splunge, and I was like, this is amazing.
This was not an accident.
But I'm gonna throw the image up on the screen of the Cesspool incident on that comic page. It's hilarious, but it's kind of like the origin of how he got that scar on his face. And again, like there's a lot of
please play that clip from the beginning of Scarface when the guy asks him how he got the scar.
Where'd you get the beauty scar, tough guy? Eating.
How am I going to get a scar like that eating?
Oh man, that is.
I will. In fact, I'm also going to add the scene where the Joker talks about how he got his scars in all of those scenes in The Dark Knight.
Well, you look nervous. Is it the scars? You want to know how I got them?
So yeah, I again, Cesspool wins it. He's, and I don't even think we should do the last round, but we're going to have to anyway, aren't we?
I got to admit, I'm a little angry that Grand Slam manages to kind of skip all the previous stuff. That doesn't seem fair somehow.
Yeah, it's like how the Patriots get home field advantage the first week buys in the playoffs every year. For the listeners that have no idea what's going on, just ignore that.
I know, I hear you. Explosion happens now.
Round 4.
Okay, we have made it to the final, and it's Cesspool versus the mystery 13th figure Grand Slam. So who will win out? Only we have the power to decide that. Unless you want to do a podcast about this, then go for it. Justin, who you got and why is it worth even doing this?
Oh man, this was a tough call. Grand Slam was a much needed original figure from, the 1982 line that hadn't quite been done yet in the modern era. There was just so much need for yet another figure using that 25th anniversary Flash parts and almost the exact same color scheme as that original Flash. I know I heard at least 3 people asking for that somewhere along the line. Grand Slam's reused head sculpt was almost as good as Cesspool's newly sculpted. And I'm kidding. That's all bullshit. Cesspool is amazing. Grand Slam is awful.
Cesspool takes the first hit. Adam.
Well, before we get to the obvious, I will say I don't think Grand Slam is a bad figure.
Yeah.
Shipping him in the same shipment with Bombardier is that
it's
what
wild,
happened?
Isn't it? Absolutely mental.
Oh, actually, so they didn't ship together, obviously, in the same subscription. But yeah, clearly points off for that. But it was a must-need figure if you wanted to must-have figure if you wanted to complete the 82 line. And with the 13th figures, of course, everyone, because there's this mystery element, wants it to be something great. But realistically, you're selling it on the merit of the 12 figures. The 13th is really supposed to be a bonus. So if anything, the 13th should be a repaint or something uninteresting. And so the fact that it completes the first series of G.I. Joe, I think, is a pretty cool distinction.
I'm going to fly down to Florida and punch you in the face.
Yeah. and again, I would rather have this figure than Blackout, honestly. Based on those criteria, I think Blackout's a better figure, but I think that this figure works better in the 13th role.
They've both got head sculpts.
Yeah, no doubt this figure suffers from dated tooling when at this point we're already into Pursuit of Cobra, where there's, amazing figures at retail, and then this. But yeah, clearly Cesspool wins. I was going to try and make a joke about Grand Slam, but I'm like, it's not even a joke. It's so obvious. But, I don't hate this figure.
He struck out. He struck out.
Having the scrap iron launcher is pretty inspired to try and kind of mimic why am I drawing a blank here? The HAL, is that right? The HAL.
Yeah.
But you know,
the laser exterminator, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to agree with everything said here. I mean, this was a foregone conclusion, really. Cesspool does take the win, but we have to I think there's a couple of things with Grand Slam. One, I agree with you, Adam. I think the actual figure is fine, brilliant, awesome, great, but the head sculpt's poor, even for the standard that some of the 25th figures have. I think it's a very poor head sculpt. It just has no personality to it. And I know certain, you could argue, well, yeah, there are people on the Earth with a face with no personality in it, and they're like, okay, fair enough. But that head sculpt has so little features and so little going on that it doesn't really even look like a human head anymore in my brain. So I kind of feel like that is such a problem for me that it's hard to kind of jump over, try to get over at least.
Plus, I mean, they released, between Rise of Cobra and whatever and 25th anniversary itself, they released 3 versions of Grand Slam already at retail. I mean, couldn't they have made one of those the red pads version instead of that Rise of Cobra off blue metallic teal whatever color that one was?
So many opportunities to make the red pads Grand Slam, and it doesn't even have to be in an FSS. Why does it have to be in an FSS? Put it into a concept somehow, into an exclusive, in a con, like a friggin' attendee exclusive. So at least then you are giving, you're filling that gap, and you're giving it to people in a situation where it's like it's not really causing you any issues. I can't think of many times other than the weapons pack that we got the last joke on. I can't think of any other times when people have been that off with the attendee exclusive. They haven't got it and gone, well, I'm off, I got this for free. I know it's not for free, but you know what I mean. It's only really they've given us some really cool stuff at that stage, and I think a Grand Slam with red pads would have been fine at something like that. But obviously, no, we get it in an FSS, in the same FSS that we're getting a repaint of that figure, which to me just is that's the dumbest decision ever made. If you're going to do Grand Slam red pads, do him in a different FSS. Don't do him in the same FSS that you're doing a repainted version of that figure. If you're going to do that, change the head. Give it a different head sculpt, because you have to at least make that figure different character-wise. Otherwise, it's just insane. Anyway, that's rant over. Cesspool, congratulations to Cesspool for winning. Any last words, guys, on FSS 2?
No, I mean, I thought that it was kind of a nice, 13th figure aside, it was a nice evolution of FSS 1. It kind of mimicked the formula pretty closely. It made some good use of tooling that was out there that didn't feel like it was beaten to death, like it did later on in the FSS. I mean, the Collectors Club is kind of a victim of their own success, so to speak, where they were so successful in releasing so many figures in a relatively short amount of time without access to a whole lot of new tooling. Just by the very virtue of doing that, they're going to start stepping on themselves as far as what parts they can use and how many different combinations they can make. So obviously, in those early days, it was a little bit more fresh and new because all these parts hadn't been hammered home quite as many times as they were later. But I think they had a good mix of foreign figures, kind of the new sculpt era, vintage figures that needed an update. They found a good kind of blend of all of those things, and did overall a really nice job with the second FSS.
I think that for me, when we went back and reviewed FSS 1, I was a little surprised to see how much better it had aged than I remembered it.
Yeah.
And comparatively, I feel like this one has almost aged a little worse than I remembered, because at the time, this felt like the sequel, like the bigger, better, more explosions. Like it had a lot of new head sculpts. It had wild decos. It didn't seem to play it as safe as FSS 1 did. And I feel like when you do that and you really swing for the fences, you have, half of them are home runs and half of them are duds, whereas FSS 1 felt sort of like they were all middle of the road with a few good ones in there. Like when it worked here, like with Cesspool and Tollbooth, it worked great. And when it didn't, like Grand Slam, it really didn't. And so there's a big disparity in the figures here. Some things that I feel like are kind of weird, unnecessary inclusions, like the sub-team stuff, Falcon, the Tiger Force guys, I feel like felt a little out of place and like they might have been better suited as part of their respective con sets. But, you know, the high points are high. The new head sculpts are fantastic. I mean, I feel like FSS 2 is sort of the beginning of FSS morphing into something bigger with, I mean, this sounds weird, but like with the inclusion of myself doing new art and with Boss Fight doing new head sculpts, it felt like they were really putting a big investment in trying to turn this into something.
Yeah.
And in some areas it really worked. And I think as time goes on, and especially, you know, FSS 3, it makes a huge leap. So, you know, it's aged okay, but I don't have quite the same fondness for it now that I did then.
I think looking at it as a group, I definitely had more. I don't know. I think I had more kind of enjoyment out of this FSS than I did the first one. As you said there, like, you know, the best things in this FSS are miles and away better than the best things in FSS 1. But like you said, FSS 1 operates more mid-range with a few, you know, kind of good things here and there. Whereas, like you say, that disparity of the worst and the best is quite jarring in this one. I do think, though, that there are a lot of figures in here that you guys weren't too keen on that I obviously, you know, do like. So obviously we're going to have different kind of opinions based on that. But I agree with you, like, where it comes to the Range Viper, which I think is a massive problem. I think he is like they've really dropped the ball on him. And Grand Slam was just I mean, that was a weird decision when you've got Bombardier in there too. One or the other, or neither. You know, or like I said before, give one of them a different head sculpt minimum, and you probably avoid a lot of the annoyance there, to be honest. You cover one base with the Red Pads Grand Slam, and then you've got another character in Bombardier, and it's not just a repaint. Unfortunately, it is. But as I said before, at the time as well, I really thought this was cool. I thought, oh my god, we've got so many different characters here. We've got, you know, Tollbooth coming in. Cesspool's amazing. Wide Scope's really cool. Dragonski's really cool. Friggin' big. I really love Big Bear and the more Tiger Force, brilliant. But I do agree with you. I think they love putting 2 Tiger Force members in at a time. They love putting like 2 of some sort of sub team in every now and again, don't they? In the FSS, and I don't really understand why they do that. Like, you know, really mix it up. Have one of each faction in there. Have one of, you know, of all the different kind of, you know, make it like a pick and mix of lots of different things. You know, like every color of the rainbow. But we'll see. Well, I suppose we'll see more varied FSSs as we go along. But anyway, that's it for this episode, the second episode of this Full Force FSS battle. Join us again soon for the third episode, where we will do the same to FSS 3.0. Thanks to my awesome co-hosts Justin and Adam, and thanks to you all for watching/listening. Full Battle Force 2018.
Deuces.